Joe Powell, Labour MP for Kensington and Bayswater, who co-sponsored this bill. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us today. There's a lot to go at here, isn't there? Why don't we start with the need for yet more research, Cambridge University research? Don't we know already the harms that social media and online algorithms are doing to young people? I think we kind of do, don't we?
I don't think anybody has come up with a plausible alternative explanation for the explosion in mental health issues amongst young people, isolation, anxiety, depression, other than perhaps the pandemic. But we know that the curve was already increasing rapidly before COVID. And in many ways, the combination of COVID and smartphones at the same time may have accelerated it even further. So my view is that...
Hang on that, with an entree of austerity, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. and youth clubs and youth services cuts and all the rest of it. So I think the boot should be on the other foot. In the absence of any alternative explanation, the precautionary principle for children's health, like we would take with toys or other things that are very strictly regulated, would be to act in that precautionary way. So, of course, more research can be helpful in identifying particular causalities, and of course, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are uses for education, technology, learning online, and so on and so forth. It might, at the fringes, it might be helpful. On the big trend that we've seen, I think we need to reverse this question and ask, as we did with smoking, as we did with seatbelts, can anyone explain an alternative hypothesis for why this is happening?
And on that question of reducing to 13 the age of digital access, digital permission, do you think that's feasible given the way the tech companies operate on this and how deep their pockets are should a government try to challenge them?
Well, you should remember that tech companies, some of them, initially said they couldn't even do gating for 18 on the internet, pornography, gambling, and so on. And now they've come around to find ways of doing age verification. I no doubt that they will similarly be able to do that for 16. I expect that's what will happen in Australia. Now that law is in place for banning social media under 16, they will have to comply and they will find ways to do it. So I don't think the technical implementation of this is as difficult as some of them make out. And of course, what that does, 13 to 16 for the age of consent to give away your data, it does, with parental consent, you could choose and have a conversation with your child and discuss the risks with them. And they could then decide to give away but it gives control, which at the moment is missing.
The question of banning smartphones from schools, the government is saying no to that because they fear it. I think their thinking is that it diminishes the good use of tech in schools if we start doing that. What are your thoughts on that?
I told a story today in my speech about a school in North Kensington that has turned itself around by extending a voluntary longer school day from 7 to 12 hours, breakfast clubs, after school activities and so on, all phone free. And the impact that that's had has been incredible. And people may have seen recent documentaries about which has also shown the impact of removing phones from school. So I don't think any head teacher would disagree about the fact that phones should be banned from schools. I have never, as a relatively new member of Parliament, I've met a lot of head teachers for the first time. Not a single one of them has said that they would not want to have phone-free schools. And I think that what a ban could do is remove some of the friction between parents and the schools and pupils by just having some simple clarity. Now, there have to, of course, be exemptions within that. There may be people that use apps to tell them what time to take their medicine. There may be uses in emergency cases. And I think maybe that's where some of the kind of hesitancy has been. Like, can we design around that? But I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility.
Almost a sense that it's Luddite to take us back even a few steps.
I think, my experience of that particular argument, I had a constituent in the chamber today, Zainab, who has been talking to her peers around Kensington, and they all want help with this too, and they recognise that going into a doom scrolling episode for 2-3 hours a day is not productive. They know it's bad for their sleep. It distracts them from doing homework and so on.
Very bad for concentration, children or not, isn't it? I noticed that myself in my use of Instagram. Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing?
Getting all these notifications repeatedly, and as adults, as you say, it's hard enough. And we don't, if you don't have a fully developed brain yet to kind of to control.
It's building your brain for it. That's the problem, isn't it? That's what's building your brain.
Yeah.
And
so I think actually, yes, there may be some initial conflict with children in the sense of making that change. But from the people I've heard and spoken with, they're as worried about this as others. It's not older Luddites. It's Gen Z as well.
So progress, but too slow for your taste. Is that what I'm sensing here?
So the step forward today, which is important to recognise, and I do want to give credit to all the parent campaigners who pushed on this, because I don't want people to be too, disheartened. The step today is a first recognition that beyond the Online Safety Act, which does a huge amount on serious harms online, and is welcome, and as others have said, is about to really come into full force. But what today did is say that we also think that children spending 21 hours on average a week on their phones is a problem. Addictive design is a problem. So it's broadening the scope of what government has recognised as the problem. It is not just about the very serious online harms that have devastated families in the most horrendous ways, but it's also about this societal change that needs to happen. And it is just the start. And the minister was very clear, and he said that in your clip just now. Inaction is not an option, and he would be amazed if we don't legislate further. So it's up to us, all of us who push to get this bill as far as it's got,
to keep pushing. To
take a small and important step forward and use it as a way to push more in the future.
Joe Powell, thank you for coming on the programme today. Labour MP for Kensington and Bayswater, who co-sponsored this bill on banning smartphones in schools and banning those addictive algorithms aimed at teenagers.